Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be looking at a story
Okay.
that really highlights how even the smallest details can have huge consequences. And for this one, we're diving into the experience of Carl McCon.
Right.
He was a wildlife photographer, and he went on this epic 5-month solo camping trip up in the Alaskan wilderness.
Wow.
Inside the Arctic Circle, totally off the grid,
Mhm.
no human contact for at least 100 miles.
So this guy was really going for it, huh? That's a long
Oh,
time to be completely alone.
yeah.
Most people can't even imagine that kind of solitude.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think draws someone to that level of remoteness?
Yeah, it's definitely not for everyone, but for McCon, it seemed like he really thrived on that sense of adventure, pushing the limits.
Yeah.
But his plan for getting picked up at the end of his trip, well, that was surprisingly casual.
Really?
His friend Rory was supposed to fly in and pick him up on August 7th,
Huh.
but there wasn't a specific time set.
So it was just like a general August 7th kind of thing. I'm surprised he wasn't more, specific with the plan.
Especially in a place as unforgiving as Alaska, it seems like you'd want every detail ironed out.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
And that loose agreement, well, it becomes the first hint of a detail that ends up having these huge consequences.
Right.
Because as that expected pickup time came and went, McCon started to feel uneasy. That anxiety about a possible miscommunication with Rory must have been incredibly unsettling.
Oh, definitely. Especially when you consider that he decided to lighten his load for the flight out. He got rid of most of his ammunition, only kept one box.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a decision that I bet came back to haunt him. I can't even imagine being in that position.
Yeah.
The isolation, dwindling supplies, and that constant nagging doubt about your only way out.
It really makes you think about the calculations involved in wilderness survival.
Mm.
Was he prioritizing space on the plane, or did he just underestimate how important it is to be prepared for every possibility?
It's hard to say. But you know what's interesting? He almost got rid of all his ammo. Oh, really?
But then he heard wolves howling across the lake from his campsite, so he decided to keep one box, just in case.
That's Alaska for you. It doesn't offer many second chances. So those days turned into weeks, and his unease turned into this dawning realization Rory might not be coming at all. And then he remembers something from 6 months prior, a night of drinking with Rory, where the pickup date was discussed August 7th.
Right.
But Rory had mentioned that he needed to double-check his schedule first.
Oh, so it was just kind of like a tentative agreement?
Yeah. And that tiny detail lost in a casual conversation ends up becoming the crux of the entire story, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's crazy how misinterpretations and the lack of follow-through can have such serious consequences when lives are on the line.
It really is. So now McCon's facing a brutal Alaskan winter. His supplies are dwindling, he's got one box of ammunition,
Right.
and a huge decision to make. Stay put and hope for a rescue,
Right.
or attempt this perilous 75-mile hike to the nearest city, Fort Yukon.
Each option has its own set of challenges. Staying put means risking starvation exposure to the element's predators.
And hiking out means navigating this treacherous terrain, unpredictable weather, a high chance of getting lost.
It's like a lose-lose situation.
It is. And it's a testament to McCon's mental fortitude that he was able to weigh those options and make such a difficult choice.
Definitely. That ability to assess risks and make those kinds of tough decisions is paramount in a survival situation.
Yeah.
Then weeks later, a glimmer of hope.
He hears a plane,
Wow.
and he frantically signals to the pilot with his bright orange sleeping bag.
It's amazing how powerful the human will to survive is. To cling to hope, even when things look so bleak,
Right.
really speaks to the resilience of the human spirit.
The plane, it belonged to the Alaska State Troopers,
Okay.
and it seems to acknowledge McCon.
So they saw him.
They did, and
What
then
then?
they flew away. No rescue.
Oh my gosh. Are you serious? Talk about a crushing blow. So the hope that he had is just extinguished, leaving him in this state of just complete disappointment and confusion. I can only imagine the psychological impact of that moment.
The emotional roller coaster, from potential rescue to the despair of abandonment, it's hard to even fathom.
It really underscores the fragility of hope in these kinds of situations, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The impact of such a letdown can be devastating.
Yeah, it's like this stark reminder of how quickly things can shift in a survival scenario, both physically and mentally.
Absolutely. And how our perception of events can become so distorted by desperation and that overwhelming need to survive.
Exactly. As his food dwindled and the winter intensified, McCon's condition deteriorated rapidly. Frostbite, constant illness. The weight of his situation just crushing him. He starts reading his hunting license out of boredom, having already read everything else he brought with him multiple times.
It's fascinating how our minds work under that kind of pressure.
Yeah.
We grasp at anything familiar, anything to create a sense of normalcy.
Yeah. And it's while reading this hunting license that McCon makes a horrifying discovery.
What is it?
He learns that raising a single fist, the gesture that he made to the pilot, is a universal signal that means all okay, do not wait. Raising both hands is the signal for needing rescue.
So his attempt to signal for help actually led to his abandonment. That's heartbreaking. It's a chilling reminder of how important it is to understand these small details, especially in these critical situations.
I know. It's a tragic realization, and it makes you think about all the decisions we make under pressure, the assumptions we hold, and the fine print we often overlook.
It really does. It makes you wonder if his focus on that one hope of rescue blinded him to other options, other details that might have been the key to his survival.
It's just heartbreaking to think that a simple misunderstanding could have such devastating consequences.
It really is a stark reminder that even when you're up against these impossible odds, one tiny detail can change everything.
Hmm.
We often talk about survival skills, the practical stuff. But what about mental preparedness? How do you even train for that kind of pressure?
It's easy for us to sit here and analyze it all from the comfort of our homes, but being in that situation, actually facing those choices, it's got to be a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
What do you think was going through his mind at that point?
Well, isolation can really mess with your head. You start to question your own judgment, doubt everything. I imagine Carl was battling not only the physical challenges, but also this huge wave of self-doubt, guilt, maybe even anger.
It's like the wilderness itself becomes this mirror reflecting all your deepest fears and insecurities right back at you.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to put it. The vastness, the silence. It all just amplifies those what-if thoughts. Do you think maybe Carl's focus on that one miscommunication, that one detail prevented him from seeing other options, from finding a way out?
It's hard to say for sure, but his story definitely makes you think about those mental traps we can fall into, even in everyday life. How often do we get fixated on one problem or one perceived failure and let it completely cloud our judgment?
It's a pretty common human experience. Unfortunately, in a survival situation, that kind of tunnel vision can be fatal.
The Alaska State Troopers found Carl's body months later. He had taken his own life. It's a tragic end to a story that started with so much hope and promise.
It really is. It's a difficult truth to process. But Carl's story is more than just a survival tale. It's a cautionary tale about the importance of awareness preparation and understanding the consequences even of the smallest oversights. But it also highlights the psychological aspects of survival. That mental toughness.
Absolutely. It's a reminder to double check, to
Right.
clarify, to never assume, to constantly challenge our own assumptions and be open to different perspectives.
That's all true in theory. But in a real wilderness survival situation, your access to technology is going to be extremely limited. So how can someone like Carl balance preparedness with the practical realities of being out there?
That's a great question. Maybe it comes down to mental resilience, the ability to adapt and improvise, to think outside the box when the situation demands it.
Yeah, resourcefulness is definitely a crucial survival skill.
Mm.
But it's also about having that support system. People you can rely on who know your plans and can raise the alarm if something goes wrong.
It sounds so simple, right? But in the rush of planning an adventure, those details can easily slip through the cracks.
They can.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Carl's story so important. It forces us to confront our own vulnerabilities, to acknowledge that even the most experienced adventurers can make mistakes, and that those mistakes can have these really devastating consequences.
It's a sobering thought, but it's also a call to action, wouldn't you say? To be more mindful, more aware, and to really appreciate the weight of even the smallest decisions.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that knowledge is power. In Carl's case, knowing the correct signal for rescue could have meant the difference between life and death. It shows how important it is to not only learn things, but to understand how to actually apply them in real-life situations. We can learn from Carl's experience and hopefully prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future.
His story has definitely given me a lot to think about. It's a powerful reminder to slow down, pay attention, and never underestimate the power of these seemingly small details. They really can make all the difference. So what are your final thoughts on all of this before we wrap things up?
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in all that excitement, overlook those little details. But Carl's story is a pretty stark reminder that those details can have life-altering consequences.
It is. And it's not just about the gear and supplies either. It's about having the mental toughness to anticipate those challenges and be able to adapt when things go wrong.
This deep dive has really highlighted the importance of that mental aspect of survival. Like, we can have all the right equipment in the world, but if we're not mentally prepared for the unexpected, we're
Mm.
setting ourselves up for failure.
Exactly. And that mental preparedness, it goes way beyond just survival situations, too. Think about your own life, your own goals. What seemingly insignificant details could be holding you back? What assumptions are you making that might be limiting your potential? That's a really powerful question to consider. It's a real challenge to look beyond the surface, you know? Question our own biases and those preconceived notions.
It is Carl's story. It's like this stark reminder that we're often just operating on autopilot,
Hmm.
accepting information at face value without really questioning it.
Hmm.
And this deep dive, it challenges us to dig deeper, to be more present in each moment.
It's a call to action, to be more mindful, more aware, and to really appreciate the weight of even the smallest decisions we make.
Absolutely. Carl McCon's story. It's a tragedy, but it's also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. That enduring power of hope, even when facing unimaginable hardship.
His story will definitely stay with me, and I hope it stays with our listeners too. It's a reminder to live intentionally, to cherish those connections, and never take the small things for granted, because sometimes those small things can make all the difference.
They really can. And by sharing Carl's story, maybe we can help prevent others from suffering a similar fate, just by raising awareness about the importance of preparation, attention to detail, and clear communication.
Well said. Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And remember, stay curious, stay informed, and never underestimate the power of a well-placed question mark. What seemingly insignificant detail in your life deserves a second look.